You're listening to Hockey Talk on the Rock
All right, stop!
with Laura and Keith.
It's interesting.
So let's back up a second.
He played absolutely out of his mind.
It made no sense to me.
And now, here are your hosts.
All right, episode 29 of Hockey Talk on the Rock. And we are back. It is Sunday, an early Sunday morning episode, April 25th. We're Hockey Talk on the Rock on Salt Spring Island, and that's Laura. I'm Keith, and Laura's got a list of things, and as we all know, or most of us probably know, the Canucks returned to play finally, and stuff happened, and they won some games. Laura, what do you got?
Well, I mean, that's like the starting point, right? Is I think in our wildest dreams of the Canucks returning to play, no matter who they were playing against, if I told you that they were going to win 3 of 4 games and take 6 of 8 points after like basically a month off with COVID, and again, most of the cases, there's a variety of symptoms, but a lot of the guys seem to have somewhat intense symptoms. So even just coming back from a flu, right, and having the majority of your team out with that for a couple weeks, and then coming back and playing the way they did is very inspiring. I want to try and keep it positive. There is some negative stuff that I will get to because it's hard to ignore, but I mean, it's amazing to me that with the lineup the Canucks are dressing and the fact that they've been battling this virus, that they came out with those wins. I want to give Ottawa some props because I feel like in both games they looked a lot better than they did earlier this season, and that Shane Pinto kid is super impressive, and I really feel like he's going to score his first NHL goal in one of the next 2 games against Vancouver. But I was watching him a lot in both of the games recently, like the last 2 against Ottawa, and he really impressed me. Their goaltending is their goaltending, but the fact that the Canucks were able to overcome that adversity of giving up that lead in the third period, specific to the last game, and that goal that Holtby let in wasn't good in the third, but in general he's played much better. I just was very impressed with their ability to fight back, and the reason why I'm wearing the Bo Horvat jersey is because I think coming out of this break, his leadership has been very noticeable. The first game, obviously getting the 2 goals. I mean, you can say what you want to say about Jack Campbell's performance in that game. It wasn't great, but he was the guy who got them, and he was the guy who came out earlier in the day and said, look, we don't want to be a pushover. We're trying to win games. We're trying to get back into this playoff race. And miraculously, basically because Montreal and Calgary have both stumbled a lot, the Canucks are somewhat back in it, which is crazy to me. But I guess this is where kind of the negative comes into me is, it was really noticeable against Toronto and that first game against Ottawa. But the Canucks' depth is, how do I put this? Probably one of the worst in the league. That like right now with Pettersson out, and then I mean you take out those guys that we all complain about who make too much money, but you see who they're dressing, and like for example, last night I thought Travis Boyd had a pretty good game. I thought he was noticeable, but the game before I was like, this guy is just nothing. And the problem for me specifically, I guess it comes down to with trading Gaudette, and again, like Gaudette, it's not about really him. It's just he had the potential to score some goals, and with him on the ice, whether or not this was legit or not, I felt like the Canucks had somewhat of a threat. Like, okay, maybe someone can put the puck in the net, but now like that third line or whatever, when it was like Howerlick and Virtanen and Boyd or Highmore, I can't remember who the third guy was on that line. I'm like, there's no way they're getting a goal, like just flat out. And you have basically 2 lines of the same players. And it really, again, it hurts that Virtanen has had such a bad year because, again, I actually thought he had a pretty good game last night. I thought he was noticeable and he was throwing some hits and he got some chances, but I just have zero faith he's going to put the puck in the net. And anyway, that's my kind of negative, but I want to give props. Braden Holtby won 3 games. Those 2 games against Toronto, he looked really good. Last night I thought he was a bit shaky, but who knows if he turns it around and has a good second half of this season, maybe Seattle does take him in that expansion draft, and if not, maybe the Canucks have a decent 1-2 punch next year. So
Yeah, no, I'll try to pick up some of the pieces here and say that, yeah, I agree with you. I thought Holtby, especially in those Toronto games, like were clearly and obviously his best 2 games in the Canucks uniform by far. In the second game, Toronto had like 40 some odd scoring chances or something. Like,
yeah,
he played really, really well, and it was probably the perfect timing for the rest of the roster to be able to, get that boost from him in his play.
mm-hmm.
So it was nice and surprising, and I wish I put money on the Canucks in that first game because I feel like I would have won a lot of money. Yeah, Pinto, I remember him standing out not last year's World Juniors, but 2 tournaments ago on Team USA, and he was a noticeable. And so when he got drafted by Ottawa, I remember to keep that in mind. So it's good that he's made the roster because I think you're right, he's going to be a player for sure.
Yeah, defensively so good already. I can't believe it for being that young. It's like, holy crap, you look better defensively than 90% of the Canucks roster. But anyway.
Yeah, and I mean, those first 2 games, the Canucks, as you kind of alluded to, were definitely assisted by the lack of good goaltending at the other end of the rink. You mentioned Campbell letting in the 2 short side goals to Horvat, and the first one was, understandable. The second one, I thought there was no way he was going to go for it, and he did, and it worked out for him. And then Big Save Dave played awful. I mean, the Oaklander goal and the second Pearson goal were
That
both
was awful. I think that's the worst goal I've ever seen in my life, to be completely honest. That Pearson goal.
They were bad.
Yeah.
So, the Canucks had a couple good things going for them at the other end as well, and it all worked out really well for them. Unfortunately, the Magic died in that first Ottawa game. The whole roster kind of came out flat, and they didn't have any run support for Demko.
No.
Can't fault him on that, but yeah, Murray, I will give him some credit because since he's come back from injury, he's played well, even though it's only been like 4 or 5 games. So it's too bad that he is out again after the injury or the little incident with Bertanen there. But yeah, he was starting to turn it around a little bit. And yeah, like the final thing I'll say is that good for the Canucks with that roster to give up the lead late on a bad Holtby goal and still come back and make sure they sealed it.
Yeah, the resilience is really shining through of that group, and it's very impressive to watch. And I think, again, like going back a month ago, or maybe a bit more than a month, because the Canucks did have a pretty good March. It was February that was awful. But to say that the Canucks are still somewhat in this playoff race is absolutely incredible. I personally don't think they do it. I think that they'd have to be so close to perfect to pull this off. But again, with Montreal and Calgary being the 2 teams they're chasing, I think anything is possible because neither of those teams. Calgary's played better of late, but they've also been playing Montreal.
Yeah,
so,
exactly. Yeah, they've both been unable to capitalize on games while Vancouver's been sitting around. I did want to quickly say that out of the new additions to Vancouver's lineup, which there's been a lot of with BC and Boyd, and if you consider Howard and all these other guys, I find that the bottom 6, even though there is a lack of threat down there, it's noticeable how much faster the bottom 6 is.
He is better, I will give you that.
And that's nice because it shows just how slow Beagle and Roussel and guys like that are. And
yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say Roussel is slow. I will give him that. I don't think he has any finish either, and I think he's not the player he was, but he's a pretty fast player.
I've liked most of the players I've seen come in that forward group, except I'm not sold on Jimmy Vesey. He's kind of like the one really guy that hasn't done an amazing something or something real noticeable where I'm like, Jimmy, nice. But
I thought his best games were the first couple games he played before the COVID break. I thought when he was first in the lineup, he had some looks, he had some chances, he just didn't capitalize. And I was like, okay, there might be something there. But post-COVID, he's been noticeably worse. And they were giving him that shot of playing up in the top 6, right? And then last night they scratched him, which I thought was the right move. I also liked that they brought back in, well, I mean, obviously Mott is a different situation because he had the longer lasting effects of COVID. So he played his first game last night, but then they also put in Zach McEwen, which again, like this is just a little mini Jim Benning. Well, not just Jim Benning, it's a problem the Canucks have had basically the entire time I've watched the Canucks, where outside of their first round, second round draft picks, they just don't get any support in terms of NHL players. They always miss. And I think McEwen is really towing that line now where to me, he's not going to be a regular NHL player. But I think, especially right now, right? Like if you look at this roster right now and he's not playing, then he's not an NHL player. But again, there's something about his game that intrigues me. It's probably just because he's got a bit of toughness to him. But I was going to go off with someone else in that cat. Oh, yeah. The other person that everyone is clamoring to see is Cole Lind because he's in Vancouver. And they brought him up there. They quarantined him and everything. He hasn't gotten a game yet. And he's someone, again, he was a second round pick. Could have gone in the first round. Jim Benning had his famous quote of being like, why hasn't anyone picked Cole Lind yet? And then he went and picked him. I really hope he gets a look here because otherwise I think, again, for his development, it would have been better off to just leave him in Utica, but it could be a numbers thing where they didn't know who was going to be ready to play. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see where he's at because I haven't seen him since, a couple years now. So it'll be interesting to see him get a look.
Yeah. On defense, it's been nice to see Levy get into the lineup. I thought he's showed decently since getting the chance again. And I feel like before COVID, but continuing now after Hamnick's really started to show to be that player that I think most people expected him to be.
I really hope they keep Hamnick around. I really like his game. I like the signing. And I agree, he's coming in now. He's kind of coming into his own with the Canucks, and he's proving to be that defensive defenseman that the Canucks needed. And I mean, again, like hindsight is 2020, but like we look at who moved around in the North Division specifically on defense. You had Tanev leave Vancouver, go to Calgary. He's been good for Calgary. Definitely hasn't been their problem, but I think Hamonic has actually done a really reasonable job filling in for Tanev's role on this team. And then obviously you had TJ Brody go to Toronto, and that's why Calgary got Tanev. So it's just interesting that everyone slipped, like kind of moved around. They're all doing relatively okay, right? I mean, obviously, like Brody's a bigger name than the other two, but I think he's worked out well. And out of all the players that they have on expiring contracts right now, I really hope Hamonic's the guy that they keep.
Me too. And they have the advantage of A, he's now here, and B, he only wants to play for one of the teams, really. So
yeah, which is good. So we like that. And then I agree. I think Yul Levy in the last couple of games has made some plays that have been noticeably good offensively, and that's something that he hasn't shown a lot of. I know he has the one goal, but I can think of for sure in the first Ottawa game where basically there was no one doing anything, and he made this super nice breakout pass. I think it was to Highmore, and Jeff Patterson said that he had to double check. He thought it was Quinn Hughes, which is obviously like some nice praise from him. So again, I noticed that. I thought it was a really nice play, and there's a couple plays in the offensive zone where he kept pucks in and he was able to generate something where I thought that was good. And this is it again for him. He's kind of in that situation where if he doesn't make his stamp now on being a regular NHL player, I don't think he's going to be one. So he's got to take advantage of it. And he's right at that line.
I think he'll stick. I think he's starting to finally get the confidence kind of thing.
Yeah, and I don't think that Jalen Chatfield is a regular NHL defenseman.
I agree.
That's all my Canucks D talk. But I don't know if you want to move on from the Canucks. The other person that I wanted to give a quick shout out to, because I know both of us have been pretty hard on him in the past, is outside of the one kind of big gaffe he made in the second Toronto game, because that was pretty noticeable. But I think that Tyler Myers has also played pretty decently the week before COVID and this week after. And again, you can say all you want about his contract. His contract's awful, but I think that first game when he played like the 30 minutes or whatever, he was decent for the Canucks. It was that bottom pairing that was like, okay, don't put them on the ice. And he had his moments, like definitely last game he had his moments too defensively, but I just want to give him a bit of credit because I think he's been noticeably better.
No, I can definitely agree with that. I've noticed that since the break or whatever, that he's not been awful.
It's all you can hope for, right?
No.
Okay, so kind of moving on from the Canucks, I have some overall league talk points. So the first one is there's a lot of controversy, or not controversy, but talk about Rookie of the Year. And I was going to talk about Jason Robertson before they brought it up on CBC last night, because I think he's been very underrated in his performance, mainly because he plays for Dallas, and Dallas literally can't score goals. Like, they've never been able to for years now.
Yeah.
But to have him step in, he has 14 goals and 37 points in 42 games. And, you know, when we did our like halfway Rookie of the Year thing, we both just agreed that Kaprizov, I still think, for the record, Kaprizov is definitely the Rookie of the Year. But I think it's impressive how consistent Jason Robertson has been and how little fanfare he got coming into the league. And the other rookie that I think everyone forgets is still a rookie is actually Igor Shesterkin. And it was brought up, and I was like, oh my God, he is still a rookie, because he didn't play enough games last year.
Right, less than 25, right?
Yeah. So I think for me now, if you ask me who the three finalists are, it's going to be those three. Those back-to-back shutouts that he had, I think really kind of like cemented him in there. Although who knows, again, New York's in the position where they're probably going to run out of games here. They've started to play better, but I think it's a bit too late. But just the kind of impact that Kaprizov has had on the whole organization. Like, he's 23, it's not like he's 30, and everyone's all like, oh, he's too old to win Rookie of the Year. Like, okay, maybe he's not an 18-year-old or whatever, but I just he's completely like rejuvenated the Wild as an organization in my mind. So I think he gets it, but it's an interesting conversation now.
I think I read a little bit about this, and obviously, in 1990 when Makarov won the Rookie of the Year,
Yeah.
they revamped the rules to make it that you can't be over 25.
Yeah.
I think they're gonna probably look at this and make an adjustment again for a limit to how many games you can play in a professional league.
Yeah.
Because, for example, I think Robertson has played 63 professional games right now, split between the NHL and the AHL, or
Yeah.
100 or something like that.
Yeah.
And like Kaprizov has like 600 professional league games because he played in the KHL for 6 seasons before he came over.
Yeah.
So I think they're going to look at putting a limit to how many
professional league games.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Like, again, I get it. Like, there is a part of me that is like, yeah, okay, it's not the same. They're probably not on the same playing field, the two of them. But if you're asking, like, right now, under the current rules, who's had the bigger impact in the rookie season is Kaprizov.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
And then kind of talking other awards or recapping, because there's like a few players and specifically defensemen that in the last couple of weeks have also, to me, they really cemented themselves as being upper echelon defensemen this year in the league. The first one is Adam Fox, which I'm pretty sure everyone's kind of saw coming. Again, he has 43 points in 47 games, and I know his points have come a lot in bunches, but he's been impressive to watch, as has the surprising Jacob Chikrin, who I think no one talks about. He has 14 goals.
Yeah.
And I think if he played for anyone other than Arizona, he'd be getting Norris conversation right now. So those are just two guys I wanted to also shout out.
I got nothing on that. I
You
mean,
got
I agree. No, I agree that they're both having good years. Chitrin, especially, I was kind of, he was on my radar around our ad drop time.
Yeah, and I didn't think he'd keep it up, and then he has. Like every Arizona goal he's in on, it's crazy. Okay, so then it's kind of moving from individual players. Now I just wanted to talk really quickly about the Penguins, because they're a team that, for me, at the beginning of the year, I thought they were going to take a step back. I thought that division they were playing in was tough, and they were the team to me that I was like, yeah, okay, if they have any injuries or if they take any sort of a step back, then they're the ones that are going to miss. And I look really bad on that now. But I actually think they've been sneakily underrated this year. Specifically, okay, if you look at their record right now, they have the exact same amount of points and the exact same amount of games as Toronto. And everyone's hyping up Toronto because it's Canada and it's Toronto, and I get it. But the most impressive thing for me about Pittsburgh is they've had, I think, either the most amount of like man games lost to injury, or they're up in that top 5. And the person that probably deserves most of the credit is Sidney Crosby, and I'm wondering if he sneaks into the Hart candidate like conversation for this year. He's 8th in league scoring right now, but again, I think for him it's just so impressive what he does with this lineup, that's missing Malkin, that has missed other players like on their D. They've missed a ton of guys. And I find it just fascinating how they seem to keep being in it. And I don't know who I'd pick to come out of that division right now if the playoffs started today, because I think it's almost impossible to pick. There's going to be 4 good teams and 2 of them are going to lose in the first round. But I think if anyone can win another cup, it's Crosby, and to me they're kind of an underdog right now, which might be dangerous for the rest of the league.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the Hart thing, because I was going to bring up that how I think we both agreed at the halfway mark that Patrick Kane might be the guy getting it.
Yeah.
I think that we would probably both agree that it wouldn't be so cut and dry anymore.
No.
Because he hasn't been the same second half of the season for him as it was the first half,
And the whole team has stumbled, right? Which will play a big part in the Hart, as always. But yeah, it's just interesting to me because I never thought the Sidney Crosby team would be like underrated.
Yeah.
And it feels like they are now, and I'm like, what? Everyone missed it, kind of thing. But yeah, there's a couple interesting, and we touched on this before, but I feel like now, if you look, I'm just gonna quickly pull them up.
I just want to add in about the Penguins. It seems like Jeff Carter has fit in pretty nicely there since he's gotten there.
There's a few guys, hey, that like they came over and they're putting up big points, like Sam Bennett, which again I don't think is gonna keep up. But it's crazy how he had like no points in Calgary, and then he goes to Florida and he's just like boom, putting up points.
Yeah.
Taylor Hall, which I feel like was pretty predictable. He was gonna.
Jacob Verana having like right.
And I mean, Math has been pretty good in Washington too. So both teams look like they did pretty well, but it is crazy how that change was so good for so many players this year. But yeah, so the Central right now, if you look at the standings, Nashville's in 4th with 54 points in 49 games. And Dallas is in 5th with 52 points in 47 games. So they have 2 games in hand. And then Chicago's next. They have 49 points with 48 games played. So it's really between Dallas and Nashville now for that spot.
Right.
And that will be an interesting race to watch. And I know we talked about it earlier in the season, how it really felt like everything was cut and dry between who was making the playoffs and who wasn't. But now there's actually a couple interesting races that are going on. So that would be the first one. And then in the East, I feel like that's set. I think it's going to be Boston, the Islanders, Pittsburgh, and the Capitals.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
I know, yeah, the Rangers have made their best push, but they're too far out of it. I don't see them getting back into it. And then in the West, that's the one that, again, the top three teams have now all clinched playoff spots. So Vegas, Colorado, and Minnesota. I really want to see a Vegas Minnesota first round matchup because I find it fascinating how both of those teams don't really have any like bona fide centers, and they both have done so well. So I think it would just be a very interesting matchup because they're kind of similar teams. I'd say Vegas will have the upper hand, but I think that'd be a fascinating series to watch. Anyway, the race right now is between, again, we talked about this earlier, Arizona and St. Louis. They both played 48 games. Right now, Arizona has one more point. Oh, sorry, they haven't. The Blues, I misread that. The Blues have played 3 fewer games and are 1 point back on the Coyotes, but neither one of those teams seems interested in winning games, except they both won the games last night. So very interesting to watch there. And then again, the North is it's gotten more interesting than I think I ever would have foreseen it being. So we'll have to wait and see. But yeah.
I think things are going to start to really ramp up for the Canucks too, because they're going to have a lot of back-to-backs for the rest of the year.
Yeah. Again, like it would take a miracle for this team with this lineup. And the thing that we skipped over was last night it was reported that Pettersson is most likely done for the season. That is what I expected. I did think that maybe the longer the Canucks stayed around this playoff push, that maybe Pettersson would come back. My guess about Pettersson is that it must be something. I know they say it's a wrist, but they must have talked about surgery or not surgery, and then he was trying to push it back without doing surgery. But I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't play again, and if the Canucks miss the playoffs, if he gets surgery like right away. So we'll see. Um,
Do you think that'll help the bridge deal?
yeah, I think Pettersson's deal is going to be fascinating. Hey,
I can kind of see it being kind of a 2x5. Like who did that recently? Dubois.
Dubois did that, but I think he's gonna. My bet will be that the lowest he gets is 7.
Really?
Yeah, and I think he can point to the playoffs last year, number one as being the reason why.
Okay.
And then I think Barzal too. That's the other person that I think is his comparable more than Dubois personally, but
And Barzal got 2 times
7.
7.5 or something.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
So yeah, that's my guess with him, but I think obviously they're bridging both of him and Hughes. I think Quinn Hughes had a tough game last night, but other than that, I thought he was better recently in general. I know we talked about defensively, he's looked a lot better of late, but I thought, if Pettersson is out, Quinn Hughes has a big responsibility to generate offense because he's really like, I love Besser. Miller's a great player. Love Horvat, but they don't have the same creativity as Hughes and Pettersson. And without PD, that responsibility then goes to um, Quinn, which will be interesting to see. But yeah, I think both those deals will be interesting to watch. But the fact that Pettersson won't have played like half a season makes his more interesting than Quinn Hughes is, I think.
I agree with you. I think the next, what is it? They got 2 more against Ottawa here.
Yeah.
I know we've been basically all season saying like this next 2 games or this next game is really what's going to determine if the Canucks can do it or not. But it really does feel again like these next 2 games against Ottawa, if they can take advantage of the rebuilding sense and
Yeah.
get points out of it, it really, again feels like maybe hey, this is a doable thing.
Yeah, the shitty thing that I'll say about these games against the Sens is the timing of them, because Montreal also plays Monday and Wednesday. So even if the Canucks win these two games, if Montreal wins both of them, let's say, it's still gonna look like they have the same hill to climb. Even
Montreal won't.
yeah. Anyway, it'll be fun to watch. I'm excited. It's nice to have the Canucks back on TV. It was a much more exciting week than I thought it would be. When I turned on that game on Sunday, I was like, yeah, it's probably going to be like 6-1, maybe the Canucks get a goal kind of thing. And then turned out a lot more positive than I thought. So, nice surprise. We'll see if they can keep it going. And yeah, here for the ride.
Along for the ride, exactly. And we'll try to tee this up again maybe next Friday and recap the whatever 2 or 3 games it is between now and then.
Yep, hopefully another couple wins. Again, as you said, these two are pretty big because they're playing against a lower team. So, gotta take advantage.
So here we go. All right. I think that's a wrap on this week's episode. And this has been Laura and Keith doing Hockey Talk on the Rock. And we will be back sometime in the future.
Boo!
So, thanks for listening. Go Canucks.